Even though I don't talk about it too much on this channel, Grand Theft Auto is one of the only franchises where every game is a day one purchase I'll take the risk on. And in fact, it's the only franchise where the trailers do not allow my brain to properly avoid hype. I still temper my expectations, but Rockstar knows exactly how to showcase the revolution each subsequent game offers in open world density, detail, and simulation. One of my favorite games to this day is still GTA San Andreas, and it's because like every 3D game in the franchise, it feels like there's always something worth stopping and gawking at. Walking around these worlds and doing nothing much engaging is just as enjoyable as the most bombastic of missions. With that said, I have some interesting thoughts about the second GTA 6 trailer given what I saw, so I figured it might be fun to share some of them both as a time capsule to reflect on and see if I end up being correct with any predictions, and because I think a few of these are ideas you might not have thought of yet. With that in mind, let's do some lame creator engagement bait. If any of these predictions are ones that are new to you, leave a like, and if any of them are also predictions that you really hope turn out to be true, toss a comment down below with which one it was, and a personal prediction of your own that you hope to see. So I figured I'd start with these story predictions, since most of them rely on the most obvious allusion being made in all of the GTA 6 media we've gotten so far. As should be pretty plain as day, this game's narrative is clearly trying to tell a tale that pulls from the story of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, or Bonnie and Clyde. To anyone my age or younger, this duo feels almost more like a set of characters than people who existed in real life, but that's because I think it's a tale that, when presented in a specific light, is strangely relatable. It's very easy to romanticize. For those that don't know, Bonnie and Clyde were a pair of early 20th century gangsters who robbed everything from corner stores to banks, killed people, staged successful prison escapes, and were eventually ambushed and gunned down together in a tragic hail of bullets that extinguished their intense passion for each other. Given the high levels of sexual tension in the second GTA 6 trailer, it's obvious that dual protagonists Lucia and Jason are in a similar boat. As Rockstar has grown, so has their interest in telling darker satires that focus on humans as criminals in a world that doesn't want them around but loves the spectacle all the same. There's no reason to believe that GTA 6 won't follow suit here, and I think this story is designed fundamentally to be a tragedy. I have an inkling of a suspicion that we're going to see several elements of Bonnie and Clyde's escapades within the narrative events of this game, albeit intertwined with a more dramatic, original narrative. This is something GTA has done from day one, and has only gotten more skilled at doing naturally, rather than simply doing movie parody missions and the like. Firstly, I believe there will be an increased emphasis on humanizing Jason and Lucia over games like GTA 5. I think a fair amount of setup will go toward explaining why they make the criminal choices they do, because a cleaner, more ethical approach has failed them. Instead of falling into crime like Nico does in GTA 4, I think they'll choose crime in defiance of an environment that doesn't trust or value them enough to let them earn an honest living. Bonnie and Clyde were at their height during the Great Depression, and most of us in 2025 are finding similar difficulties making ends meet, which has been increasingly so for a long while now, so it makes a lot of sense to channel that and use it as an avenue toward crime, getting in too deep as they gain a taste for the success that crime brings, and destroying the bond that these struggles initially born between Lucia and Jason. One of these bonding moments, I think, could be a mission or a bit of backstory about Jason attempting to help Lucia escape prison. In real life, there was a point where Bonnie helped Clyde escape from jail by sneaking a gun inside for him to use. This attempt could maybe be part of a prologue mission, and could fail, hence the guard in the trailer feeling like he's seen Jason before. In real life, Clyde had a intimate, abusive run-in with another inmate that Clyde later killed. I think that element could instead be reworked into part of Jason's life in the military, not necessarily an assault, but something that changes his perspective on life fundamentally, which pushes him to trust Lucia to a high degree because she's the one who empathizes the most. Clyde's experience with the other inmate he eventually killed was referenced by one of his other fellow inmates as the thing that caused Clyde to, quote, change from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake. I think that would match well with a narrative about turning to crime in a world that's so hostile to you, because I think similar to Clyde, Jason's goals will be less about simple fortune and more about getting revenge on the systems that wronged him. I also think that Lucia and Jason end up in an ambush they have almost no hope of overcoming at the end. I think this is also why the map seems so large, with several distinct cities that each seem like they've had more work put into them than the comparatively minor towns that dotted GTA 5's map outside of Los Santos. Bonnie and Clyde's most aggrandized exploits were while they were on the run in a desperate bid to survive, more and more of the country coming down on them. So it would make sense if the narrative flow in GTA 6 sees Lucia and Jason being forced to escape to other cities as the different story acts come to a close. Just like San Andreas, they could move between each one as the core hub, without the player being prevented from exploring any of them, mind you, until eventually landing back in the Vice City area for the finale. So what about gameplay then? What type of things do I think we'll see in GTA 6's gameplay that hasn't been made abundantly clear yet in these two narrative trailers? Well, it's probably best to start with the stuff related to the narrative elements. Firstly, I think GTA 6 is set to carry on the tradition started with GTA 4 by offering multiple endings, 3 to be exact. One ending where Lucia dies, one where Jason dies, and one where both die. In all situations, a third and potentially fourth character who are close companions will survive and fill the empty space so that you can keep playing. I believe there will also be co-op single player, and your custom version of Jason or Lucia, depending on who you pick, will be the one you play as in your co-op partner's game, and I think the world progress will be shared as long as it's something you both do together. Because of this, I think the way that the ending will play out will depend on who survives the actual mission. It won't be a simple choice like GTA 5, but rather if you want Jason and Lucia to survive, you're gonna have to actually put in the work to survive an ambush that's designed to push you to the brink. If you're playing single player, the only character at risk of dying is the one you're playing as currently, but once they do, you'll automatically switch to the other. If they both die, the mission ends right there. Related to all of this, we could also potentially see the player running a gang of some sort, something that Bonnie and Clyde were a part of. This could include a drug running system that calls back to the fact that the height of the Barrow Gang's operations were right at the end of the US era of alcohol prohibition. I couldn't find any indication that they ran alcohol, but the link, however tenuous, is still there and could open the game up to further allusions to prohibition era goings-on. There are other stories from that time that could be retold in a modern setting. What about other gameplay elements that are less related to the narrative? Well, firstly, I think the game will target 30 frames per second, likely with no option for a 60 FPS alternative. This game is doing an incredible amount of high-end technical stuff, and that's beyond the fact that the amount of NPCs, cars, variety of actions, and everything else seems several steps higher than we've ever seen. Considering the resolution is already somewhat low despite how crisp it looks, I don't think we can expect much more than 30 FPS, but I think it will be surprisingly stable given how optimized Red Dead Redemption 2 was and how much people appreciated that fact when compared to the dire state of performance nearly every previous Rockstar game could find itself in. I think they recognize how important largely stable performance is, and so they've targeted stability from the start. Also similar to Red Dead 2, I think we'll see a dynamic sunburn system to go alongside the hair growth system they've already got. We see Jason in several different states of crispness, and I think it'll be based on how much time we spend in the sun and what we're wearing when we're exposed. I don't think it'll impact gameplay though, and I think RDR2's temperature system will be omitted entirely. All it will be is visual burns from staying out in the heat too long. And I think along with the sunburn system, we could see a tanning system that runs alongside. I'd be willing to bet that the television we saw in GTA 4 and 5 will be replaced with 2 new systems that match real life more seamlessly. Nobody watches TV anymore. Instead, I think we'll see 3 different systems across 2 devices. Open the video sharing app on your phone and it'll offer shorts like we see in the first trailer. This feed will contain hundreds of small videos, and that list will grow as you progress. Then, on the television, it'll instead be a YouTube equivalent for longer amateur content you can browse, and several brand-based streaming apps that align with the networks we see in previous games. I think the player will also be able to actively participate in the Shorts app, and the YouTube equivalent. I think the player will be able to pull out their in-game phone at any time and capture stuff happening in the world. They can then upload it as their own shorts. Meanwhile, the Rockstar editor can be used to make more cinematic and hand-directed things for the long-form content platform instead. But importantly, I also think these will be attached to the social club. What you upload can be viewed by other players, liked, commented on, and shared. Then you can choose to move between a community content tab, masked as a recommended video system complete with a search function, and the traditional Rockstar created content that comes with the single player. Which brings us to our final prediction, which is one I think people will have mixed feelings on. I think that GTA 6 will indeed only be $70, unlike a lot of other people. But I think that's because the new GTA Online will be its own separate $70 release that has its own long-term development arm. Obviously, those prices could be slightly different, but I think the separation of GTA Online for GTA 5 and Red Dead Online for RDR2 were experiments testing the waters for this. That will mean getting both will be rather expensive, but I think the benefit is that if you only want one for now, you only need to buy that, without spending so much extra money. But moreover, I think it will give Rockstar the means to justify developing DLC and updates for both that coincide with each other, maybe narratively, but definitely in terms of content. That way, single player doesn't get left behind again, and maybe GTA Online will stay more grounded and balanced in the long term. If GTA Online ends up getting Liberty City as a DLC, for example, I think GTA 6 will get the same, while having its own story arc to go along with that. And that also prevents it from being necessary to have all 5 billion gigs of both modes installed simultaneously. So, were any of these predictions one that you hadn't thought of? If so, you know what to do. Now all we've got to do is wait for a year to see how everything pans out.